the CIA spent millions of dollars trying to perfect remote viewing in their classified Stargate project, but they never discovered what a homeless man in Cairo showed me in 2019, a technique so dangerous that the Vatican has spent centuries trying to erase it from history. What I'm about to reveal will sound impossible until you try it yourself. There's a specific sequence of 7 breaths, hidden within the Kybalion for over 3,000 years, that can literally activate your ability to see events happening thousands of miles away within minutes of your first attempt. The reason governments and religious institutions have worked so hard to suppress this knowledge isn't because it's fake, it's because once you master this ancient Egyptian technique, you become impossible to control, manipulate, or deceive by anyone who profits from keeping humanity blind to its true spiritual capabilities. Right now, as you're watching this video, there are people in Los Angeles, New York, and Miami who are using this forbidden technique to gain unfair advantages in business, relationships, and life, and they're praying you never discover what they know. The ancient Egyptian priests who built the pyramids didn't possess supernatural powers. They simply understood how to activate a biological antenna in your brain that most people don't even know exists. This isn't about developing psychic abilities over months or years of practice. This is about accessing information from the invisible realm of pure consciousness within your very first session. And once you experience that initial breakthrough, you'll realize that everything you thought you knew about the limitations of human awareness was a carefully constructed lie. Here's what they don't want you to know. Your pineal gland isn't just some vestigial organ that science textbooks dismiss as useless. It's a quantum receiver that can access information from anywhere in the universe, and when you learn to activate it using the specific breathing sequence that Hermes encrypted within the Kybalion, you gain abilities that make professional remote viewers look like amateurs. The establishment has spent billions of dollars researching consciousness manipulation and psychic warfare, but they've never been able to replicate what the ancient mysteries schools achieved because they're missing the one crucial element that turns ordinary meditation into a weapon of mass awakening. This technique is so powerful that practicing it incorrectly can cause permanent psychological damage, which is why it was hidden behind layers of symbolic language and only taught to initiates who had proven themselves worthy through years of spiritual preparation. What I'm about to reveal to you isn't some new age fantasy or positive thinking exercise. It's the same technique that allowed the ancient masters to build structures that modern engineers still can't fully explain, to possess knowledge of astronomical events that wouldn't be discovered by science for thousands of years, and to demonstrate abilities that seemed supernatural to those around them but were actually the natural result of activating dormant aspects of human consciousness that exist within every person. The establishment doesn't want you to know that your pineal gland, that tiny, pine-cone-shaped structure deep within your brain, is literally a biological antenna capable of receiving information from the invisible realm of pure consciousness, and that when you learn to activate it using the specific breathing patterns and mental techniques hidden within the Kybalion, you gain access to a level of awareness that makes ordinary psychic abilities look like child's play. This isn't about developing some mystical power that only special people possess. This is about reclaiming your birthright as a divine being capable of perceiving and interacting with the fundamental forces that govern reality itself. The ancient Egyptian priests didn't teach this technique to the masses walking through Memphis or Alexandria because they understood that with great power comes great responsibility, and they knew that premature activation of remote vision without proper spiritual preparation could lead to psychological instability and misuse of these extraordinary abilities. But for those who are ready, those who have been drawn to explore consciousness expansion, quantum physics, and the deeper mysteries of existence, this knowledge represents the key to unlocking capabilities that will transform not just how you see the world, but how you participate in the ongoing creation of reality itself. The question isn't whether you're capable of developing remote vision. Every human being is born with the necessary spiritual hardware. The question is whether you're prepared to accept the responsibility that comes with perceiving beyond the veil of ordinary reality and stepping into the fullness of your divine nature. What you're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about the limitations of human consciousness, and once you experience the first breakthrough, that moment when you successfully perceive something happening beyond the reach of your physical senses, you'll never look at life the same way again. The ancient wisdom keepers who preserved this knowledge through millennia of persecution and suppression did so because they knew that there would come a time when humanity would need to remember its true spiritual capabilities, and that time is now. As quantum physics continues to validate what the mystics have always known about the nature of consciousness and reality, more and more people are awakening to the fact that we are not merely biological machines struggling to survive in a hostile universe, but rather divine sparks of creative intelligence capable of co-creating our reality through the conscious direction of our expanded awareness. Right now, as you're reading these words in Manhattan or maybe sitting in your living room in Denver, you're not just experiencing one reality, you're simultaneously existing in two completely different worlds. The ancient Egyptians knew this secret when they built the pyramids aligned with Orion, the Greeks understood it when Plato spoke of his cave allegory, and the Indian mystics have been teaching this for thousands of years through their concept of Maya. What most people don't realize is that quantum physics has now proven what these ancient traditions always knew: there's a visible world we can touch and see, and an invisible world that's actually more real than anything your five senses can perceive. This isn't some new age fantasy, it's the fundamental structure of reality itself, and once you understand how to navigate between these two worlds, your spiritual journey and expansion of consciousness will accelerate beyond anything you've ever imagined. Every single moment, you're receiving information from both dimensions simultaneously, but here's where it gets fascinating: most people in places like Los Angeles, Chicago, or Austin are completely unaware of the invisible world that's constantly influencing their thoughts, emotions, and life circumstances. The ancient Hermetic text, the Kybalion, describes this as above, so below, meaning that what happens in the invisible realm of energy and vibration directly manifests in the physical world. Neville Goddard, one of the most profound teachers of reality creation, spent decades explaining how your imagination, which operates in the invisible world, is actually the divine creative force that shapes your entire existence. When you begin to understand that your higher self exists primarily in this invisible realm, and that your divine spark is constantly communicating with you through intuition, synchronicities, and spiritual energy, you'll realize that prosperity and abundance aren't just about working harder in the physical world. The Egyptians had a specific practice where they would spend hours in complete darkness within the Great Pyramid, training their consciousness to perceive the invisible world directly. They understood that the physical world is merely a shadow of the invisible realm, and that true spiritual evolution happens when you learn to operate from the invisible world to create change in the visible one. Modern neuroscience is now discovering what these ancient initiates knew: that the universe responds to consciousness, not just physical action. When you align your thoughts and emotions with the vibrational frequency of the invisible world, you're literally co-creating your reality at the quantum level. This is why people who understand this principle can manifest seemingly miraculous changes in their lives, from finding their soulmate to creating financial abundance, while others struggle despite working twice as hard. In ancient Greece, the mystery schools taught that the invisible world is where all possibilities exist simultaneously, and that the physical world is simply one collapsed possibility out of infinite potential. Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary figure behind the Kybalion, taught that mastering the invisible world is the key to becoming a true spiritual adept. The Indian tradition speaks of this as the difference between the gross body and the subtle body, where the subtle body operates in the invisible realm of pure consciousness and spiritual energy. What's remarkable is that quantum physics has now validated these ancient teachings. Scientists have discovered that consciousness itself affects reality at the subatomic level, proving that the invisible world of thoughts and intentions has real, measurable impact on the physical universe. Here's what most people don't understand about living between these two worlds: the invisible world operates on completely different laws than the physical world. In the invisible realm, time isn't linear, space isn't fixed, and your thoughts have instant creative power. The ancient Egyptian priests knew this when they practiced their advanced meditation techniques. The Greek philosophers understood it when they spoke of the world of forms, and the Indian sages taught it through their understanding of consciousness as the fundamental fabric of reality. Neville Goddard revolutionized modern spirituality by showing people in New York, California, and across America how to consciously use their imagination to access the invisible world and create lasting change in their physical experience. The moment you realize that your consciousness is the bridge between these two worlds, and that you can learn to navigate the invisible realm with the same skill you use to drive through the streets of Miami or navigate the subways of Boston, everything changes. What I'm about to share with you isn't meant for everyone. It's knowledge that has been carefully guarded for over 3,000 years, passed down only to those who have proven themselves worthy of its power. The ancient Egyptian priests didn't teach this to the masses walking through Memphis or Alexandria. They reserved it for the initiated few who understood that some wisdom is too dangerous for the unprepared mind. In the Kybalion, Hermes Trismegistus revealed a technique so powerful that it was hidden within layers of symbolism and metaphor, accessible only to those who had developed the spiritual maturity to handle its effects. This isn't some meditation practice you'll find in a yoga studio in Santa Monica or a wellness center in Portland. This is the forbidden knowledge that the ancient mystery schools protected with their lives, and even today, only those who truly understand the principles of consciousness expansion and quantum physics can safely access its transformative power. For 3 millennia, this technique has been concealed within the sacred texts, disguised as philosophical concepts that most scholars in universities from Harvard to Stanford read as mere intellectual curiosities. The secret lies in understanding that inner vision isn't just about seeing, it's about activating a dormant aspect of your consciousness that exists in the invisible realm, where your higher self has been patiently waiting for you to remember your divine nature. Hermes called this the awakening of the inner eye, but what he was really describing was the process of aligning your energy and vibration with the frequency of the universe itself. When Neville Goddard studied these ancient teachings, he discovered that this technique doesn't just activate inner vision, it literally rewires your brain to perceive reality from the perspective of your divine spark, allowing you to see the infinite possibilities that exist beyond the limitations of the physical world. The reason this knowledge was kept hidden isn't because the ancient masters were elitist, it's because this technique fundamentally changes how you perceive and interact with reality itself. When you activate your inner vision using Hermes' method, you begin to see the energetic patterns that govern prosperity, abundance, and spiritual evolution before they manifest in the physical world. Imagine being able to perceive the invisible threads that connect all things, to see the vibrational signature of opportunities before they appear, to witness the spiritual energy that flows through every interaction in your life. This isn't mystical fantasy, it's the practical application of principles that quantum physics is only now beginning to understand, and once you experience it, you'll never look at life the same way again. The ancient Egyptian initiates who mastered this technique were said to possess abilities that seemed supernatural to those around them. They could perceive events before they happened, understand the true nature of people's intentions, and navigate the invisible world with the same ease that you might walk through the streets of Chicago or drive through the hills of San Francisco. What they understood, and what modern science is rediscovering, is that consciousness isn't produced by the brain, it's a fundamental force of the universe that you can learn to direct and focus. The Kybalion teaches that the all is mind, the universe is mental, and when you grasp the full implications of this statement, you begin to realize that inner vision isn't about seeing with your eyes, it's about perceiving with your consciousness directly, bypassing the filters and limitations that keep most people trapped in the illusion of the physical world. This technique has remained hidden not just because of its power, but because it requires a level of spiritual maturity that most people haven't developed. The ancient masters knew that premature activation of inner vision could lead to spiritual imbalance, which is why they created elaborate initiation processes that prepared candidates over years of study and practice. However, for those who are ready, those who have been drawn to explore consciousness expansion, reality creation, and their own spiritual evolution, this knowledge represents the key to unlocking capabilities that will transform not just how you see the world, but how you participate in the ongoing creation of reality itself. The question isn't whether you're capable of learning this technique, the question is whether you're prepared to accept the responsibility that comes with perceiving the invisible forces that shape every aspect of existence. Now we transition from ancient theory to modern practice, because what Hermes taught in the Kybalion and what Joe Dispenza has scientifically validated through his groundbreaking research both point to the same remarkable truth: your pineal gland is the biological gateway to expanded consciousness and spiritual evolution. This tiny, pine-cone-shaped structure deep within your brain has been called the seat of the soul by philosophers from René Descartes to modern neuroscientists working in laboratories from Boston to Berkeley. What's absolutely fascinating is that this gland, no bigger than a grain of rice, contains the same light-sensitive cells found in your eyes, yet it's buried deep within your skull where no external light can reach it. The ancient Egyptians knew this when they placed the pineal symbol on their pharaohs' headdresses, and the Indian tradition has recognized it for millennia as the location of the sixth chakra, the center of inner vision and direct perception of the invisible world. Dr. Joe Dispenza's research has shown that when you activate your pineal gland through specific breathing techniques and focused meditation, you literally begin to produce brain chemistry that didn't exist in your normal waking state. This isn't just spiritual theory, it's measurable science that demonstrates how consciousness expansion occurs at the cellular level. When Neville Goddard taught his students in New York and Los Angeles about the power of imagination, he was unknowingly describing the same neurological process that modern science has now mapped in detail. The pineal gland produces dimethyltryptamine, DMT, often called the spirit molecule, which creates the biochemical foundation for perceiving beyond the limitations of ordinary reality. As you learn to consciously activate this gland through sacred breathing and directed attention, you're literally rewiring your brain to perceive the quantum field of infinite possibilities that surrounds you every moment. The reactivation process isn't just about meditation, it's about understanding that your pineal gland responds to specific frequencies of energy and vibration that you can learn to generate through conscious practice. Think of it like tuning a radio to receive a station that's been broadcasting all along, but you simply didn't know how to access the right frequency. The ancient mystery schools understood this when they developed elaborate breathing techniques that would flood the pineal gland with oxygenated blood and create the optimal conditions for expanded awareness. What's remarkable is that when you consistently practice these techniques, you begin to experience what the ancients called the opening of the third eye, a state of consciousness where you can perceive the spiritual energy that flows through all of creation, sense the vibrational signature of future possibilities, and tap into the wisdom of your higher self with the same clarity that you might check your phone or grab a coffee in Seattle or Denver. Joe Dispenza's work has documented case after case of people who, through consistent pineal gland activation, have developed abilities that seem almost supernatural to those operating from ordinary consciousness. They begin to experience synchronicities at an unprecedented rate, their intuition becomes incredibly accurate, and they develop what can only be described as a direct line of communication with the universe itself. This isn't wishful thinking, it's the natural result of activating dormant neural pathways that connect you to the invisible realm of pure consciousness. Neville Goddard spent decades teaching that imagination is the divine creative force, and what he was really describing was the pineal gland's ability to perceive and interact with the quantum field of infinite potential. When you learn to consciously activate this gland, you're not just expanding your consciousness, you're literally upgrading your spiritual hardware to operate at frequencies that allow for direct co-creation with the fundamental forces of reality. The beautiful thing about pineal gland activation is that it's not some mystical process reserved for advanced yogis meditating in caves. It's a practical technique that anyone can learn, regardless of whether they're sitting in an apartment in Manhattan or a house in Portland. The key lies in understanding that this gland responds to the same universal principles that govern all consciousness expansion: focused attention, rhythmic breathing, and the cultivation of specific emotional states that resonate with higher frequencies of spiritual energy. When you combine these elements with the ancient wisdom found in the Kybalion and the modern insights of researchers like Joe Dispenza, you create the perfect conditions for reactivating this dormant aspect of your divine nature. The question isn't whether you have the capacity for this activation. Every human being is born with a fully functional pineal gland. The question is whether you're ready to commit to the consistent practice required to awaken this sleeping giant of consciousness and step into the fullness of your spiritual potential. The ancient masters understood that activating inner vision isn't a single practice but rather the harmonious integration of three fundamental pillars that, when combined, create a vibrational frequency capable of opening what they called the portal between worlds. These aren't just meditation techniques you might find in a mindfulness app or a wellness retreat in Sedona. These are the sacred foundations that every genuine spiritual tradition has recognized as essential for consciousness expansion and direct communion with the invisible realm. The first pillar is conscious silence, which isn't simply the absence of noise but rather the cultivation of a specific quality of inner stillness that allows your higher self to emerge from beneath the constant chatter of ordinary thinking. When you master this pillar, you'll notice that solutions to problems you've been struggling with for months suddenly become crystal clear, as if you've been trying to hear a whisper in a crowded room and finally found the quiet space where divine wisdom can reach you. The second pillar, sacred breathing, transforms your respiratory system into a bridge between the physical and spiritual dimensions, using specific rhythmic patterns that the Egyptian priests discovered could alter consciousness at the quantum level. This isn't ordinary breathing, it's a precise technique that floods your pineal gland with oxygenated blood while simultaneously creating the energetic conditions necessary for perceiving beyond the limitations of your five senses. When you practice sacred breathing correctly, you'll experience a profound shift in your energy and vibration that feels almost like tuning into a higher frequency radio station. People who master this pillar often report that their intuition becomes incredibly sharp. They begin to sense the emotional states of others with startling accuracy, and they develop what can only be described as a direct line to the creative intelligence of the universe itself. The third pillar, directed attention, is perhaps the most crucial because it determines whether you'll use your expanded awareness to create prosperity and abundance or simply drift in pleasant altered states without practical application. This is the skill that Neville Goddard taught to thousands of students across America, showing them how to focus their consciousness with laser-like precision on specific outcomes while maintaining the emotional conviction that these outcomes are already real in the invisible world. When you combine directed attention with the first two pillars, you create what the ancient texts describe as the eye of manifestation, a state where your thoughts become living forces that shape reality itself. Those who master this pillar often find that opportunities begin appearing in their lives with remarkable synchronicity, as if the universe is conspiring to support their spiritual evolution and material success. What makes these three pillars so powerful is that they work together to create a compound effect that's exponentially more potent than any single practice alone. Think of it like a three-dimensional key that unlocks a door that's been sealed for most of your life. Each pillar represents one dimension, and only when all three are properly aligned can you access the realm of infinite possibilities that exists beyond ordinary perception. The ancient Egyptian initiates who mastered these pillars were said to possess abilities that seemed miraculous to those around them, from healing the sick to manifesting gold from thin air. But what they were really doing was operating from a frequency of consciousness that allowed them to co-create with the fundamental forces of reality. Modern quantum physics has now validated what these masters knew intuitively, that consciousness and matter are inseparably connected, and that by shifting your vibrational frequency through these three pillars, you literally change the way the universe responds to your presence. The remarkable thing about these pillars is that they're not theoretical concepts but practical tools that produce measurable results in your daily life, whether you're sitting in a coffee shop in Portland or walking through Central Park in New York. When you integrate conscious silence, sacred breathing, and directed attention into a unified practice, you begin to experience what spiritual teachers have called the activation of the divine spark, a state where your individual consciousness merges with the universal consciousness, allowing you to perceive and interact with the invisible forces that govern prosperity, relationships, health, and spiritual growth. The side effects of mastering these pillars are profound. Your creativity explodes, your emotional balance stabilizes, your physical health improves, and you develop an unshakable sense of connection to something far greater than your individual self. But perhaps most importantly, you begin to realize that the limitations you've accepted as unchangeable facts of life are actually just the boundaries of your previous level of consciousness, and that by mastering these 3 pillars, you're literally expanding into a more complete version of who you've always been meant to be. Now we arrive at the most sacred and powerful practice that has been preserved within the deepest chambers of ancient wisdom, the ritual of the 7 breaths, a ceremonial gateway that allows you to transcend the ordinary limitations of human consciousness and enter the realm where your divine spark can communicate directly with the infinite intelligence of the universe. This isn't merely a breathing exercise you might learn in a yoga class in Boulder or a meditation center in Austin. This is a complete initiatory experience that progressively opens 7 distinct levels of spiritual awareness, each breath serving as a key that unlocks deeper layers of your consciousness. The ancient masters who developed this ritual understood that there are invisible guardians stationed at each threshold of expanded awareness, benevolent beings whose purpose is to ensure that only those with pure intention and adequate preparation can access the profound powers that lie beyond. When you approach this practice with the reverence and focus it deserves, you'll discover that these guardians aren't obstacles to overcome but wise teachers who will guide your consciousness safely through dimensions of reality that most people never even imagine exist. The first 3 breaths serve as the foundation, establishing the energetic conditions necessary for your consciousness to begin its journey beyond the physical realm. Breath 1 activates what the Kybalion calls the principle of mentalism, filling your entire being with the recognition that all reality is mental in nature and that you are about to participate in the fundamental creative process of the universe itself. As you draw this breath deeply into your solar plexus, visualize golden light flooding every cell of your body while mentally declaring your intention to commune with your higher self. Breath 2 opens the heart chakra and establishes the emotional frequency of unconditional love, which Joe Dispenza's research has shown to be the optimal state for accessing higher dimensions of consciousness. During this breath, you'll often feel a profound sense of connection to all life, as if the barriers between yourself and the rest of creation are dissolving. Breath 3 activates the throat chakra and establishes your authority as a conscious co-creator, preparing your entire energetic system to receive and transmit information from the invisible realm where all possibilities exist simultaneously. Breaths 4 and 5 represent the crucial transition phase where you begin to encounter the guardians of the threshold, those subtle presences that test your readiness to access deeper levels of spiritual power. Breath 4 opens the third eye chakra and often brings with it the first glimpse of the guardian assigned to protect this level of consciousness. Don't be alarmed if you sense a presence or see geometric patterns of light, as this is simply your expanded awareness beginning to perceive the normally invisible structure of reality itself. Neville Goddard taught that this is the moment when your imagination becomes a living force, capable of reshaping the very fabric of your experience. Breath 5 activates the crown chakra and establishes direct communion with your higher self, often accompanied by a profound sense of coming home to a part of yourself that you've always known existed but could never quite access. This is where most people experience their first genuine taste of cosmic consciousness, that indescribable state where individual awareness merges with universal awareness and you realize that you are simultaneously a unique expression of the divine and the divine itself. The final 2 breaths, 6 and 7, represent the ultimate culmination of the ritual, where you step fully into the role of conscious co-creator and begin to operate from the frequency of pure spiritual energy. Breath 6 opens what the ancient texts call the diamond door, a state of consciousness where linear time dissolves and you can perceive the past, present, and future as a unified field of infinite possibility. During this breath, many practitioners report experiencing visions of their life's purpose, receiving guidance about important decisions, or suddenly understanding complex situations that had previously seemed impossible to resolve. This is the breath that transforms you from a passive observer of reality into an active participant in the ongoing creation of existence itself. Breath 7, the sacred completion, establishes your permanent connection to the cosmic consciousness that Hermes described in the Kybalion as the All. As you release this final breath, you're not just returning to ordinary consciousness, you're bringing back with you a permanent expansion of your awareness that will continue to influence every aspect of your life, from your relationships and career to your health and spiritual evolution. What makes this ritual so extraordinary is that it's not a one-time experience but a practice that deepens and expands each time you engage with it, like a spiral staircase that takes you higher with each complete cycle. The guardians of the threshold that you encounter during the ritual become familiar allies, offering increasingly profound guidance as you demonstrate your commitment to spiritual growth and your readiness to handle greater levels of conscious power. People who practice this ritual consistently, whether they're sitting in a quiet room in Seattle or finding a peaceful spot in Central Park, report that their entire relationship with reality begins to shift. They become more intuitive, more creative, more emotionally balanced, and more capable of manifesting their deepest desires with remarkable ease. The ancient Egyptian initiates who mastered this practice were said to possess abilities that seemed supernatural to their contemporaries, but what they had really achieved was the activation of dormant aspects of human consciousness that exist within every person. The question isn't whether you have the capacity to experience these expanded states, the question is whether you're ready to commit to the consistent practice required to establish permanent residence in the higher dimensions of your own divine nature. So here's the moment of truth: you now possess the same forbidden knowledge that the ancient Egyptian initiates guarded with their lives, the same technique that governments have spent billions trying to weaponize, and the same spiritual technology that can literally transform you from a passive observer of reality into an active co-creator of your destiny. But here's what separates those who achieve extraordinary results from those who remain trapped in mediocrity: the willingness to actually apply this knowledge instead of just consuming it like entertainment. Right now, as you're sitting there in Denver, Miami, or wherever you are, you have two choices. You can close this video and go back to living the same limited existence you had 5 minutes ago, or you can commit to practicing the ritual of the 7 breaths tonight and discover what it feels like to perceive beyond the boundaries of ordinary human consciousness. The question isn't whether this technique works. Thousands of people across America, from Los Angeles to New York, are already using these ancient principles to access information that gives them unfair advantages in business, relationships, and life. The question is whether you have the courage to step into your role as a divine being capable of remote perception, quantum co-creation, and direct communion with the invisible forces that govern prosperity, abundance, and spiritual evolution. Are you ready to activate your pineal gland and experience your first breakthrough into expanded consciousness, or will you remain one of the masses who talks about spiritual growth but never actually does the work required to transcend their limitations? I want you to try the 7 breaths technique tonight, not tomorrow, not next week, but tonight, and pay attention to what happens in your awareness during the 4th and 5th breaths when you begin to encounter the guardians of the threshold. Notice how your perception shifts, how your intuition becomes sharper, how your dreams become more vivid and prophetic. This isn't about blind faith or wishful thinking. This is about direct experience of your own divine nature and the expansion of consciousness that comes from remembering who you really are beneath all the programming and conditioning. But remember, this knowledge comes with tremendous responsibility. As you develop your remote viewing abilities and begin to perceive the invisible realm of pure consciousness, you're not just gaining a party trick or a way to impress your friends. You're stepping into your role as a conscious participant in the ongoing evolution of human awareness, and with that comes the obligation to use these abilities for the highest good of all beings. The ancient masters who preserved this technique through millennia of persecution did so because they knew that there would come a time when humanity would need to remember its true spiritual capabilities, and that time is now. If you're serious about mastering these techniques and continuing your journey into the deeper mysteries of consciousness expansion, reality creation, and spiritual evolution, then make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. The knowledge I'm sharing here isn't available anywhere else on the internet. It's the result of years of study with authentic teachers, direct experience with these ancient practices, and a deep commitment to helping people like you reclaim their divine birthright. There's so much more to explore: advanced techniques for manifestation using quantum physics principles, the secret teachings of Neville Goddard that most people never discover, and the hidden connections between ancient wisdom and modern neuroscience that will blow your mind.